Element podcast, where we dive into the known, unknown, undiscovered, discovered, and discovered, while at the same time guiding you towards unlocking your fifth element through transformative insights for the mind, body, and soul. With that being said, today we're going to be exploring the power of frequency and vibrations. Sound, frequency, and vibration play an important role in our everyday lives, which closely correlates with numbers. I personally see it as one and the same due to the fact that you can't go throughout your day without it. Many ancient cultures use sound as a way of healing from Aboriginal people of Australia to Vedic Indian philosophers, the Greeks and Egyptians. These sound healing techniques have been an integral part of healing rituals and ceremonies that can be traced back more than 40,000 years ago by indigenous tribes that we ourselves still to this day partake in. And with me today, I have someone who profession is based around sound, frequency, and vibrations. Maybe he can give us more insight on how these things have an impact on not only his life, but not only his life, but those he worked with also. I want to welcome audio engineer Daniel Gregory.
Hey, what's up, yo? I'm doing good, Chance. How you doing? Is this where I do
Yeah,
my
for
my
sure.
voice of my film before a live studio audience? Yeah.
How you doing? How you doing? It's been a long time no
So
see. I haven't been to the
yeah, long
studio.
time no see. Like you
Right,
used to
right,
come in the studio and like record music, and then and then you got into boxing, and then
right.
and then you're like, you know what?
uh,
This is where stuff is at.
nah,
Like
it's just I
passivity
have my
through
own
violence, I guess.
setup or whatnot. So it's like, and I've been trying to learn. Well, I've been learning and have learned so much,
Mm.
personally with just exploring my own setup and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's like, there's so much to this, but
right.
like when you start giving yourself limitations and like, you basically kind of work inside of that,
Hmm.
it's like, people can become experts in doing what they do and knowing what, like with like, the setup that they got,
Right.
and then, like the quality of the workmanship of like what they do is just as good as what, professionals in like big ass studios, can do.
Right.
So, it's kind of crazy what people can do at home these days.
Yeah, and not only that, with me, having my own setup, it gave me the opportunity to actually explore my sound and like what I, want to hear from myself in a
Yeah.
way. Like me actually being behind, the actually engineering part of my artistry. So it's kind of like I've developed a certain sound and craft behind engineering myself, you
Yeah.
know. So, but I guess we could start off. You could start off by introducing yourself to the people. Kind of what you do, your upbringing, name, or whatnot. Just a little introduction for the people to get to know you.
Let's see. I was born on a dark and stormy day. No, nobody wants to go back that far. My name is Daniel Gregory. I am a recording engineer and a mixing engineer up here at Sit and Spin Recording Studios. And we do everything from rap, jazz, bluegrass, metal, and other things. To also doing film and podcast. We actually have a video side of the studio. It's called GVL Media, um, which we do a lot of stuff for, like Greenville Tech or U-Turn. God, man, I'm trying to think of who else. We've had like a few clients that I can't name. I try to stick on the audio side of things
Hmm.
since that's my expertise and that's where most of my interest is at. Is just making things sound good.
Right, right.
You know.
I'm gonna start off with more so some personal questions when it comes to like audio engineering and sound and everything like that, and then we're gonna
Mm.
dive into. Well, I want to ask you first and foremost: Are you into like more so the science behind like sound
Yes.
frequencies and vibration. Okay, well, we'll
Yeah,
dive
it's
into that a little bit closer to
yeah,
the
it's
end.
that's more or less just kind of like the physics aspect of it, because that's something that's just infinitely fascinating,
Right,
and
and it
it
can go
often
on and on.
yeah,
Yeah,
it bleeds into
definitely.
other things. Yeah.
Right. So my first question for you is, can you share some insights into the evolution of audio technology and how it has impacted your work over the years?
Man, so that's a giant question, because like, I mean, it all really started with being able to record just audio through like like what they used to record on like record players and things, right?
Mm,
So I mean, like back in the day, uh, the systems that they used for microphones and the systems that they used for records were almost exactly the same thing. It's like basically it's like they would have a horn and a needle, and the needle would like write, you know, the it would actually like respond to the vibrations happening in the horn right
mm,
directly to the record, and then like there you go, there's your wax cylinder. You stick it on
wow.
your record player and you play it, and it just reproduces the vibrations going, like in the reverse direction, which is kind of crazy. There was a oh man, I wish I could remember his name. There's a YouTuber. Uh, the guy is just like famous for doing like metal guitar stuff,
Mm,
and he ended up like doing exactly that. Like he went to like he found like an old antique, recorder, and did exactly that. He recorded some modern music on like an old like wax cylinder thing, and just kind of showcase that. But like, that's where things used to be, and I mean that's about as simple as it gets. It's like you think of like an old record player, it's like it's just a horn and a needle, you know,
mm,
and like back in the day, it's like the recording systems were that.
wow.
It was just the inverse of it.
Man, that sounds so difficult to well just think about well thinking about like where we at with like technology and
Yeah, but
engineering and
but this is
distributing records and everything like that. It
yeah.
sounds like that's a difficult process to go through
What
to try
what's
to.
what's what's weird about it is like when it comes to the mechanics of it, is like that's one of the
Mm,
simplest things that you do. It's like you could actually like probably find stuff laying around your house and build something like that. You know, that's just
mm.
kind of how simple it was back then.
Oh,
Um,
that's interesting.
and then like as electricity and things progressed, and like telephone systems and whatnot,
Mm,
um, people started developing ways to use magnets to convert a voice or something into an electronic signal, and then the
mm.
electronic signal could be carried through other gears and machinery and things like that. And then records came about, and then after records came tape cassettes, and after tape cassettes, CDs and all that. But
Right.
it's like things have actually gotten more complicated as they've evolved. And it's like when you go back and you look at like the golden era, like when records, like big, what they call the, like the 10-inch records, it's like when those things were being sold, and being sold by the hundreds of thousands and millions,
Mm,
is like the equipment and gear that they had was basically like a way to get the microphone signal into something that could turn the volume up on it, and then from there to the thing that was actually like printing to the record. It's kind of the short end of it, but that's really kind of what it was. And they were still basically focusing on like, okay, this is live.
mm.
Do your best. Good luck. And that was it.
So it was kind of like one take, everything.
Yes.
Mm,
And then you'd have like all these different engineers in there, because one person's only got two hands, right?
mm-hmm,
So if you had like all these other channels and all these other things going on, you'd have to have multiple hands to go through and try and like orchestrate, okay, well, the volume of this thing needs to go up, the volume of this thing needs to go down. All of it was live, so if you were just one dude in there, you, you're not going to get a record done.
right.
You'd have to have like a whole team of people to actually make it happen, and they would work in concert.
Oh
you know
man. And that's the era you grew up in.
no, not in the 50s and 60s, no sir, that was before my time.
Okay, okay, okay.
It's like we're just kind of talking about like the whole history
Right,
of how
right, right, right,
complicated things used to be, to now we can do it on our phone.
right. Wow, That's a treacherous time to think about. I guess it's because of where I'm at, like the advancement of technology, where I'm able to, you know, just experience without being in that era.
Yeah.
I guess it'll probably be one and the same if I was in the era back then, but obviously I never experienced it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back in the day, it's like, you had like a songwriter is like the way that they would go through and write songs is like they'd have to like literally like write it down. Like if it wasn't like in their notes or if they didn't have like the ability to actually read or write music,
Hmm.
they would just have to like perform it and memorize it, you know.
Mm,
So it's kind of like if they had an idea about a song, they'd have to like work it out like in the real world and like play it and perform it or whatnot, and then
mm,
get to the point to where like they had almost completely perfected it, and then you go in and then you do the recording. You know,
mm,
I don't think it wasn't till roughly like around when the Beatles were around that they could actually just like record stuff and then kind of piece together like in the studio.
mm.
It's like I'm sure there were probably examples of people doing that before, but they were probably the biggest band with the largest budget at the time to where they had access to all the like latest and greatest recording methods and top people and like all that stuff. But
Right. They definitely had the budget. Talk about the Beatles here.
yeah, but the cool thing is like nowadays is like one of the biggest benefits of technology and like what it can do right now is anything that kind of gets you from your idea to having something, like where you can like kind of have a tangible form of it to where you can like listen back to it or work on it. But the quickest way from like your idea to like the thing is like whatever the shortest path of that is going to be ultimately for the greater good, because then it's like you can interact with it or you can see it or but anything that gets in the way of like oh well, here's this idea, but how do I make the idea a thing? It's like a lot of that stuff just kind of gets in the way and kind of keeps you from being creative and making art. you know
Right.
it's kind of like
Right.
if you were an artist and you had like 500 shades of red. It's like, what am I gonna do? It's like I got
Right.
500 shades of red. It's like, just pick one. you know
Mm. Speaking of that, I had a question. I gotta find it again. That kind of go hand in hand. Can you discuss the importance of maintaining a balanced workflow and managing time effectively during audio production projects?
that no. I was like, I'm a little ADHD, so it's like it's one of those things where like I can tell another artist is like, okay, when you come in, here's what would be a good use of time. Here's what wouldn't be a good use of time. But like when it comes to like me myself, like if I'm the artist, like I'm like it's kind of like when a doctor is a patient. Like
Mm,
doctors usually make like the worst patients because like they're always trying to over analyze what's going on, or like not wanting to cooperate, or trying to assume like, oh well, like this is how it's done and like this is what you got to do. It's like the whole
right,
physician heal thyself thing, right?
right.
It's like doctors have doctors. So like when I'm working with other people, it's like I can see the forest, you know
Mm,
but like when it's just me, it's the exact opposite. It's like I can't see the forest. I don't know why that is, but usually it's like when I'm on the outside and I can like kind of see like the whole thing,
mm,
is like I can give people like ideas and pointers and tips. But when it comes to just me, like my own advice is usually like even if I do take it, it's like the wrong advice. It's like I'll sit there and like I'll work on a song for like 3 days, and then like I can give the idea to somebody else and they'll be like done with it in like 20 minutes. you
mm,
know it's weird how that works, but perfectionism plays a big part in it. And
right. I was just about to say that.
yeah, like as an artist, it's really hard to like when you're making something, it's really hard to like let it go and like let it be out into the world. And because like you're always kind of like, oh, it's not perfect, it's not perfect, it's not perfect.
Right.
It's like it's always like this close to being perfect.
Right. And I deal with that also when it comes to me making music. And then not only that, but I can make a song and of course it's to the point where I be trying to perfect everything I do, but I'll make a song, listen to it 1,000 times, and then that 1,001st time I listen to it, it sound like, I don't know, it's kind of like procrastinating all over again. And
Yep.
like the first time when I first recorded, I caught the chills and everything. It felt so wonderful. But
Mm-hmm.
then after a long time of me listening to it and trying to perfect everything, it's like all of that goes straight out the window.
Yep. Yep. And but that's the weird thing though is like when you're writing a good song, you're making it, it's y- it's like one of those things that's really hard to describe. Is like if I'm working with an artist, is like I
Mm-hmm.
get to function in a capacity to where it's like I get to try and help them to kind of keep that feeling and kind of keep focused on that, because that's one of the biggest indicators of is a thing good or is a thing not good.
Mm-hmm.
Because if as long as they're able to keep that feeling and keep that judgment, you know, that's always ultimately going to be for the better. And you're right. It's like after you've been doing it like time and time and time and time again, it's like you lose it, and then like all of a sudden you're like you're just unsure, you know.
Right.
But if I'm working with somebody else, it's like you basically you get to team up on it, and you get like immediate feedback on something, which is nice because you can sit there and be like, I did this. It's like, does this fit? It's like, I don't know. Do it again. And you do
Right.
it again, and it's like, yeah, that fits and it feels good, you know. And what's curious to me is how there's a lot of science behind what's actually happening, the frequencies that are interacting with each other,
Mm-hmm.
but the our brains, kind of handle all that on the back end, and like we can just sit there and focus on, does it feel nice? Does it
Mm-hmm.
does it does it make us want to dance? You know, and that's one of the if like you can tune into that and you can like kind of hold on to that, it's like you'll ultimately end up being better for it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because you were talking about earlier, it's like music is used for healing, and sometimes
Right.
like sometimes like I use it like when I'm studying or I'm reading, because like it helps me to focus. But it's like if you're focusing on that on those feelings though, it's like ultimately is like that's a better compass than like should the bass be up 2 dB or should the bass be down 2 dB. Like,
Right. And since we already on the top, I guess I'll just mix it in here because I love the science of like sounds and things like that. So, how do you select frequencies and tones to evoke specific emotions or states of mind in your audio productions?
uh that's a good question. It's one of those things where it's kind of like for me, like when it comes to like if I'm writing something for myself,
Mm-hmm.
you know, then what's going on is like I'm actually focused on the story. Like I'm focused on the story and the feeling that I'm trying to evoke, and I usually try to keep that in the forefront because like everything else is kind of superfluous. Like I could write a song and it might just be like vocals and acoustic, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and depending on the story and like what's going on, is like that can be just as impactful as like having like an entire symphony, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or it might actually be that. It's like it might just be like vocals and like some violins and stuff, or like it might be like a pop song where like the idea is like trying to convey like hey girl, I want to get you on the dance floor, and like we're
Right.
just gonna like shake it for like hours, like.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like when you start with that, and like you kind of you got to be decisive, like I know we're supposed to be talking about frequencies, but like the frequencies themselves, they don't actually matter that much.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I could take a song that was like we'll say maybe it's in like A major, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could transpose that down to I could transpose it down to like a C or a D or something,
Right,
or like whatever.
right,
And ultimately, like, it's going to be pretty much exactly the same song, but you really like as you're listening to something, like your brain's just going to like, whether you're thinking about it or not, it's going to tell you is like, okay, this feels good, or
right. It's
okay,
gonna
like
adjust.
this is too slow, or all that. We kind of have this built-in calculator that just kind of tells us like,
Right.
this feels good, this doesn't feel good, you know.
On a day-to-day basis, it's a lot of things that I personally feel as if, sometimes we know what feel good and what don't, but most of the time we go with that what don't feeling. Especially well, I'll say in our culture. Can you kind of go into more detail of maybe why that's so, or why you feel as if that's so?
Hmm. I don't know, cause like I was a I was, when I was younger. It's like most of the music that I listened to is like back in like the '90s. Is like it was
Mhm.
like the angry like rock and like the angry like kind of metal
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
But like even that, what's weird about it is like, despite how it may seem, it's like it was cathartic. Because like when you're younger and you're just kind of like angry at the world for whatever reason, it's
Right.
just kind of weird. It's like I look back now and I was like, there's so many things that I was angry about, and I look back and I'm like, they were very silly in comparison to like what I know now today.
Right. Right.
But at the time, I was like, man, the world is just like so wrong, and like people are just like messed up. And now it's kind of like, yeah, but as long as they're not in my way,
Yeah.
you know.
And oh yeah, you go ahead.
But there's this like this weird but interesting thing that happens, like and like metal music is like a really good example of that. Like, you get these weird combinations of things that might sound like it comes out of a horror movie,
Mhm.
or things that might sound like, they may have been like produced at somebody who is just like, living every day as if every day was like Halloween or something. you know
Mhm.
there's something that's kind of like different but cool about that. And like, despite all the like the rough edges and like the gnarly stuff that's going on,
Mhm.
there's something about that when you combine all those elements that's just very cool, and there's something enjoyable about it, and like it actually causes your body to kind of rock in motion with it, or to just kind of sit there. And then you also get kind of the same things when it comes to like classical music, because there's some classical music where you listen to it, and like, instead of it being like all smooth and like mellow and all that, is like there's just interesting things happening, because
Right.
like I'm trying to think of some composers like Vivaldi, or like not Mozart, what was it? There's this one guy, his name is Gustav Holst,
Mhm.
and he was a composer in the 1800s, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of his work, was actually appropriated and used by John Williams, who ended up putting in stuff like E.T. or like Indiana Jones
Mhm.
or Star Wars. There's like some other stuff he did, but like you can actually like go back and like listen to it. And I think one of the reasons that like directors would be like, hey, could you write us a song that kind of sounds like this, or a song that kind of sounds like this?
Mhm.
It's, there was something that they were drawn to it, but like there are these elements in these songs that are almost kind of like animation, or like, it's almost kind of like there's characters like in what the instruments are playing, even though there's like no story to it,
Right.
you
It's
know?
like an expression of itself.
Yeah. So I think like when it comes to that, you know, music itself is like it can speak and it can talk to you even without words. And it's such a cool thing.
Right. And speaking of you bringing up the fact about like higher, more, it's kind of similar to like rock music. Right here in front of me, of course I did like a little bit more studying and researching before this about like upbeat tunes, and I found that upbeat tunes and higher frequencies and those music such as like rock music that's up in the like 160 BPM, 140, well, 120 and higher, that it stimulate the brain, triggering the release of neurotransmitters that activate the dopamine within, you know, the brain, that is associated with like feelings of joy and pleasure, compared to like more so lower frequencies that induce the that induce the state of relation by encouraging the brain to produce alpha and theta brain waves, which, you know, is linked to calmness and meditation. You
Hmm.
know, so I found that very interesting. So, do you get into um like, well, I know of course you do, because it's engineering, we always playing with numbers and things like that, but can you explain the concept of resonance and its significance in both music and somewhat of like healing practices?
I can't really speak when it comes to healing practices.
Yeah, that's why I said, yeah.
It's like I can't really talk about that because the thing is like when it comes to those sorts of things, it's like I know that music, and especially like when it comes to like binaural beats and
Right,
brainwave frequencies, is like
right.
that's a very specific thing. Like it's not found in all types of music because like binaural beats, for example,
Mm-hmm,
there's basically two opposing frequencies happening at once,
mm-hmm,
right? So let's say that let's just say I've got a tone that's
mm-hmm.
happening at 40 hertz, right?
Right.
And I pan that over on the left side, and then I've got another tone that is 42 hertz, right?
Mm-hmm,
And I pan that over to the right hand side. Well, there's going to be a difference in the oscillations because you know basically it's like no tone or frequency happens without movement. So it moves at 40 cycles a second, while the other one moves at 42 cycles a second. And they're going back and forth or up and down, if you will, but they're like waves, like an ocean or like a stream, right?
right.
But at some point, because they're different, those peaks and those valleys, they're gonna they're gonna like meet each other, and then they're gonna separate and they're gonna meet each other. And at the points where it meets each other, like it's gonna have like as long as it's consistent, it's basically gonna create a beat,
Mm-hmm,
or it's gonna create like a rhythm. So it might just be like wow, wow, wow,
mm-hmm,
wow. It might just do that. But because of the pace of it, our brain perceives those two different signals as being one thing. It's like don't ask me why that is, but it is. And so like, people have done studies and they've figured out that okay, well, at this particular rate, this seems to stimulate theta waves or delta waves or
mm-hmm.
alpha waves or
Right,
like any of those things. And
right.
they have different properties. Like alpha waves are like when you're awake. Theta waves are like more like
We going to sleep
when
and
you're relaxed or you're about to
relax. Yeah.
sleep. And delta, I think, is more primarily towards sleep, I think. But yeah, so that. But when it comes to doing like more modern music or things that people are going to try and play on the radio,
Mm-hmm,
I usually never encounter that. Because you're more kind of interested in like just kind of getting everything else together because like the music as a whole is going to kind of produce an effect, and it's like it may not necessarily be something that's going to like relax you and calm you and like make you go to sleep, but it might be the thing that like you listen to and like you're like, oh man, this would be good, like when I'm driving down the road, or if I'm taking a road trip or something,
right.
you know. So there's a lot less science on the front end when it comes to like making popular music or modern music.
But what I can say is that it do have some type of emotional attachment to the human physiology and psychology, so to say.
I don't know, because like I've never gone to the ER and then like had them be like, oh man, we need like delta and theta waves stat, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like zero times if I like been in that situation or like been there and be like, you know what this guy needs? It's like he's vomiting all over the place, but that dude needs that dude needs some beta waves.
Hey,
That's what
but
he.
hey, it'd be probably great if they could include that. Start including things like that, like
Well,
different
they do.
sound.
There are, I guess, music therapists. It's like some of the things that they've found is that there are certain songs and certain frequencies and certain things that actually obstruct pain. It's like
Right.
I forget what study this was, but they actually did a study. It's like people who are at the gym
Mm,
and they're listening to like the more aggressive like metal stuff,
right.
uh, they feel less pain, or at least they're less aware of pain, which is
Mm,
interesting, because like it's a kind of dangerous thing, especially when it comes to like a gym scenario,
mm.
because you could work out and then like your muscles are telling you, hey, it's time to stop. But then you're like listening to something else. It's kind of
And
like
it just push you.
ignoring that, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
like you get home from, your hour, 2 hour, like whatever you do at the gym, you come home and you're like, oh man, I feel like I was hit by a bus, like
Right.
that's why. It's like you were actually blocking some pain receptors. So there is some there is some truth to how music affects our physiology and our brain, but also like our brain is kind of what tells us what is and what isn't reality you know
Mm. Right.
so if we're focused on something else other than like the thing that we're doing, it's like it really it kind of makes you question. It's like, okay, it's like, did I work out too hard, or you know I don't know. It's like I lost my point somewhere.
Oh yeah, but no, I definitely get what you're saying though, because just based off of experience, like I could be in the gym listening to something, even though I have dumbed down on that. Now
Yeah.
I like to listen to reggae a lot. So I could be in the gym listen to full blown reggae music and I
Yeah.
be in the groove like
Yeah,
um
reggae is an interesting thing. Reggae is
yes.
a super interesting thing because like a lot of that stuff, like it turns out to be like kind of political, you know.
Mm,
But and some of it's just kind of like they'll have stories of like talking about some of the hardships and things that people go through. But
right.
then like the music itself is like it is just it makes you want to relax, or it makes you want
Right.
to like
It's
just kind
soul
of
soothing.
groove, and it puts you in like a feel good state, you know.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's interesting.
All right, so we got. I'm gonna kind of switch off of the more so scientific, or the what you call it, physics behind, sound and engineering. I want to dive into more so, you know, you personally like the mixing and everything, your workspace of, you know, what you do. So,
Mhm.
what are some common challenges you face when recording live music performances, and how do you overcome them?
Oh, like okay. So are we talking about like if I'm running a live sound at a show and there's like an audience and there's like people, and like are we talking about that sort of situation? Or are we
Uh,
talking about like if there's like a group and they're all performing and
Boom.
I'm
There
just
you
like
go.
capturing like the performance?
There you go. That one. That
The
right
second one. Okay.
there. Yeah, the second
Uh hmm. One I say one of the biggest challenges I probably have is the because like we charge by the hour,
one. Right.
so like in our scenarios, like time is actually kind of against us, so
Mm,
we have to make quick decisions to make something sound good. And unfortunately, not every song is going to sound the same, so not every miking technique and not every tone or not every amp sound or every instrument or every mic position, not that's not always going to get you the desired results. So it's like I'd say probably the biggest hurdle that I find is like when it comes to sorry, excuse me, when
you
it
good.
comes to like having to make a decision, is like, okay, what's the more important thing? Do we need something quick, or do we need something that sounds good? Because like when it comes to like cheap, sounds good, and quick, it's like
Mm,
you can have two of the three, but you can't have all three.
mm,
So I think there's like a Venn diagram I saw somewhere. It was like cheap, uh, good quality and fast. It's
Mm,
like you can't have all three. It's like you can have two out of the three, but not all. This is kind of the same thing.
mm,
So if I've got somebody and they come in, they're like, "Hey, we're recording an album. I've got an unlimited supply of money."
right.
It's like I'm like, okay, that could be a great thing, but they're probably not going to be my favorite client
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you can be picky up to a point and you can make things sound really really good,
Mm,
but there's always that temptation to like like when you've got too many options, is like sometimes it gets in the way of being able to release something or being able to record something, or like you can get something that sounds great, but then there's always that question of like, well, but can it sound better you know
mm,
and if you keep going in that direction, then like eventually it's like you never actually like get to the recording aspect of it. But then you've got the exact opposite end of the spectrum, which is these people have no time and they want to get everything done in a hurry, in which case is like you have almost no time to make those decisions. So it's
right.
just kind of like put a microphone on it and go, because these guys have 2 hours and they've got 15 songs to get through for
Right.
whatever reason, and you can use your experience to know, okay, well, this scenario sounded good for these people, so I can set things up this way, or this scenario sounded good for this particular thing, and you can rely on your experience for that. Um, and then like, but at the end of the day, it's like, are they going to be happy with what they did for those 2 hours? So it's like you're always having to make choices and sacrifices.
Right. That's how I was though. When I used to come to the studio, I
Yeah,
would probably just have an hour with what, two songs.
yeah,
But it you for some reason it always turned out for well at least for me. And I don't know about you, but on my end it always turned out. You knew what you was doing. That
yeah,
always what I got from you every time I came to you. Everything was professional.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so
and
I love that.
it's like one of the weird and the interesting things that I've come to find out is like part of it is like the biggest piece of the puzzle is getting a good performance.
Mm,
It's like if it's like sometimes I ask people, it's like, think of me like a teammate or like an assistant coach or something.
mm,
you know it's like I'm not here to judge you. It's like I'm here to facilitate and get you what you need to do so that you can perform your best.
mm,
Because like if a person is comfortable and they're relaxed, hopefully they're not anxious, because like once a person gets anxious and they start getting in their own head and they start thinking, should I sing it like ah, or should I sing it like ah?
mm,
Like once you get to that level, it's like you've kind of already lost the battle. It's like,
mm.
it's like if you're worried about every syllable, then you're not focused on like telling people your story or
Right.
like what the song's about. Just like you're no longer focused on the feeling, you know, and it's like anything that you can do to like get somebody to the point where like they can create and they can perform and they're not worried about all the other like tiny stuff. Like if I can do that, then I've done my job, because ultimately it's like people can they can record at home and they can like tweak stuff out to like their heart's content.
Mm,
But if they can like come here and I can give them like that magic or like that feeling, or like
mm.
get pull the creativity out of them and like capture it and like show it back to them. It's like if I can do that, then that's kind of the thing that makes it all worthwhile.
Right.
Because like it's great, man, because like you get to see like the light on people's faces, like when they've like done something and like they made something cool,
For
and it's like
sure.
you get that feedback. You're like, oh yeah, it's like this is great. It's like we're making a thing together,
Right.
and that's a
Right.
cool feeling.
All right, and you touched on the topics of like home studios and microphones and everything. I want to dive into a little bit more for the people out there that do have home studios or just can't afford, the professional big studio hours or whatnot. Because as we know, inflation is
Yeah,
happening as we proceed on in life, and Of course, you gotta adjust with the inflation that's happening. So, can you share some tips for achieving optimal microphone placement in different recording scenarios?
Yeah. So here's the main thing is there's two or three different types of microphones. It's like you've got dynamic microphones and condenser mics. It's like
Right.
condensers seem to be a little bit more sensitive,
Mhm.
um, and they kind of, in a way, almost like kind of compress things a little bit. And they're great when it comes to having to record something and you're not worried about the space, or like the space is kind of part of the sound. It's like, and they're great for picking up like all the tiny little you know uh, nuances and like details of stuff, right?
Mhm.
um, the bad thing is like if you're in a small space like a closet or something and you don't have like a lot of acoustic treatment, you're gonna pick up a lot of the sound of the
Oh, and can you
voice.
touch on the importance of acoustics also as you
Well, you mean like just acoustic treatments or
uh I guess I'll say if you continue, I ain't mean to cut your
oh,
wisdom. You
okay,
go. I'm gonna get
all right.
into that.
But yeah, it's like if you get like a condenser mic and you're like recording in a closet, is like you're gonna pick up a lot of the sound of like that closet, and unfortunately now you're just kind of stuck with it, and you're gonna have to like make that work in the mix. So unfortunately, but if you've got and really the main thing with like acoustic treatment is just like getting rid of the reflections of like whatever sound you're recording.
Right.
Um, it's like so like anything that you can do to minimize that is going to be for the better, because a lot of people record something, they'll throw like their own kind of like reverb or like whatever on it.
Mhm.
But when you've got like a weird reverb because it's stuck to the recording and there's nothing you can do about it,
Mhm.
you just kind of have to work around it. I've heard things recently where it's kind of like I think home recordings kind of become so ubiquitous.
Mhm.
Some of these larger artists, I've basically started recording stuff and then like asking, it's like, yeah, can you make it sound like I was recording in like a small room or like a box or
Mhm.
So I've actually heard some professional recordings where like they purposefully made it sound like that just because it's become so ubiquitous.
Mhm.
Um,
And me personally, I'm not gonna lie. Even like as you can see, I have a little treatment around like my space, like I have it here. But I've based off of my own personal mixes, I've got the best sounds without any treatment. I don't know if it's the space that I'm in, but
so
I've
the
got the best sound without like large amounts of like acoustic treatments throughout, the space I'm in.
so the main thing is like when you produce a sound, like let's just use singers as an example. It's
Mhm.
like, but like when you're producing a sound, it's like as sound travels and it leaves your mouth, it's going to hit the walls and then it's going to come like racing back in whatever direction it goes in, but like it basically scatters around.
Mhm.
So if you're closer to the microphone, then like if you're a lot closer to the microphone than any particular reflections, then like you're gonna have a better direct sound and you'll get less of the room.
Mhm.
This is especially true with like when it comes to like dynamic microphones, because like those things, they're a little less sensitive, which is good because they're gonna pick up less of like the room reflections.
Mhm.
Whereas condenser mics, not so much. It's like condenser mics, they're a little more evened out, a little more balanced. So like they're gonna pick up more of that room sound.
Right.
So you can get really good recordings, but the trick of it is like the louder you are, the more energy that's going to come back from the walls,
Mhm.
from like because it's impossible to say anything and not have sound come back, because you know all recording is pretty much done indoors. So
Right.
if you do it outdoors, you're gonna get birds and
Oh
lawnmowers
yeah, you're gonna get
and
everything. There's no
and
doubt
like,
about it.
yeah. So but indoors is like your biggest enemy is basically the walls.
Mm. That's probably why I like where's the microphone? Because I rarely this one that I'm on right now.
Mm.
This one I don't really use that one, but I can tell the difference. I use this like a live stage.
Yeah, it's a like a Shure, was that 58?
It's
No,
an AKG.
AKG.
Yeah. But this, I use this like up close mouth like this instead of this one. But I noticed the difference that with this one, which is a condenser microphone, it do bring more so of like the whole room, like you can
Yeah.
hear all of it. But of
Yeah.
course, I know how to smash it and press it, yeah, to make
So
it
like,
sound.
but like there are like a lot of people who like there's a microphone like the one that I'm using right now. It's a Shure SM7B. It's typically known as like a broadcast microphone,
Mm-hmm.
but if you were to take it apart and look inside, like it looks really similar to this other microphone that they make, which is which is known as a Shure 57,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this particular microphone was like it was a favorite. Like Michael Jackson used it like when he was recording Thriller. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it was like one of the. It's basically like this microphone's claim to fame. You know, but it's also like kind of known as a broadcast mic. But anyways, there are people who have like recorded on just like a 57, and like it sounds great, and people kept it on the record, and it's like, it might be like the vocal recording, or a lot of people use that particular microphone for guitars,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not an expensive microphone. So
And they
there's this.
sound wonderful,
It
whatever.
does.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where like if it sounds good, it is good. And the recording industry is really big about like there's all these big toys and tools and things that are expensive, and
Right.
like some microphones cost tens of thousands of dollars. You know, like some of them, like there's the Sony, I think it's a C800.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's used a lot by pop artists, because like it's got like this really airy kind of high end to it, and a lot of people just kind of like what it does for a particular voice.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for everybody, but if you want to buy one of those things, it is $18,000 for
Wow,
one
that's
of them.
expensive. But some that's a great investment depending on what you're working on.
I
But
don't know, man.
speaking, oh, you could go ahead. You could go ahead. You
It's
go
like I haven't had a record that's paid me more than $18,000 yet. So it's like, but
ahead.
when I get there, I'll let you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Speaking, since we on the microphone topics, nowadays I run into a lot of guys, well, younger guys, of course, that literally record off of their iPhone with headphones. The head you could attach the earpods, the
Yeah,
earbuds you can attach to your phone, and they just record off the microphone, you know, off
yeah,
the earbuds. Can you touch on the importance of, well, don't get me wrong. I want to first say that some of those guys songs that I've heard, it actually sounds good, but of course I could tell the difference from the recording. I
yeah.
could tell a major difference, but can you touch on the importance of having a microphone when it comes to creating quality sounds and content based around your craft of.
It's like I wish I could say I wish I could say different, but unfortunately, that is a call by the audience.
Right?
It's
What?
one of those weird things where it's kind of like if it becomes acceptable and desirable for people to use like that particular microphone,
Mm-hmm.
and who knows, like maybe like this generation, or like what are we at, like generation whatever comes after Z, I forget whatever comes after Gen Z, but like if like if there's a bunch of recordings and a bunch of hits and people
Mm-hmm.
use that to record on,
Mm-hmm.
when they get older, it's going to be a nostalgic thing. So like somebody might later on produce a microphone that sounds exactly like the mic that was in the old iPods.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
that could be a thing.
Right.
So it's really hard to say, you know, what people should or shouldn't invest in, because it's really the audience that makes that call.
Right.
So like
Oh,
if
you,
there's like
you go. Yeah.
if all the hits from 2025,
Mhm.
if all of them are recorded on somebody's like cheap iPhone mic,
iPhone. Yeah.
and they make the Billboard, top 20 or top 100 or top 40 or
That's
whatever, and
insane.
like all of them do that, then like that's going to start a trend.
Yeah, and that's what
And
it's
then
like. That's where the future going after that.
and then like basically the discussion and the debate is, do the listeners care about quality?
Mm.
you know
There you go.
is like is the important thing the content, or is the important thing the quality?
Mm,
because when you listen to old records, like records from like the 1930s or 1940s,
right.
they sound they sound like crap by
Horrible.
comparison. You know, it's like you listen to them, it's like man, it sounds like it was recorded, on somebody's like old cheap low budget mic that
Yeah.
they got from Radio Shack or from
Right.
Best Buy or whatever.
Right.
You know, it's like you listen to like those old records versus like what we got now. It's like what we got now is like pretty much any tool or any kind of effect or
Anything you need.
plugin, available. There's a lot of technology around music that can make things sound cool. But if somebody writes a cool song at home and they use, their earpod mic and people like it, who am I to argue with that?
Right? Yeah, yeah. You're right about that because I can say, um, guys like actually seeing results, like good results, especially like on SoundCloud or anything, like they recording off their phone, but these guys going viral. So it's like you can't knock that,
Yeah, but
literally.
what the way technology is going is like I could literally like record a song with me singing right now and then put Drake's voice on it and release it. Like
Oh
that's
yeah.
where we're at right now.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's like either that or like I could record like 10 songs of myself and like
Mhm.
sing them to like the best of my ability and then train like an AI voice thing and then like use that to replace whatever crappy vocals that I just did like on a brand new song. It's in a way it's gonna like it's gonna be like, okay, is the person cheating because they're using their own voice, but they're using
Right.
like an AI model of like their perfected voice. You
Mhm.
know that that's gonna be the I guess the question in the future.
Mm. Yeah, that is a question mark to leave right there. I'm gonna leave the question mark right there too. But what are some essential tools and plugins in your audio engineering toolkit, and how
Oh
do
man,
you use them effectively? Because I know you got some gadgets.
I do got some gadgets. It's it really just kind of depends on the thing. Like there's this one that I came across embarrassingly like a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's this thing is called Smooth or Smooth Two. It's made by this company called Us UX Sound,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually it lightly or heavily, depending on what you're wanting to do,
Mm-hmm.
will go in and look for resonant frequencies or
Mm-hmm.
like things that may be like things that cause a little too much mud or like a little too much sibilance,
Mm-hmm.
and it selectively reacts in real time to those things, and it's been probably like the biggest help on cymbal sounds because I every once in a while I'll get drummers that are just like banging on cymbals or like they bring harsh sounding cymbals and like that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of part of their sound, but like when it comes to like what the band needs to sound like, it's like it's not really helping it or doing any favors. And that thing, it's like it's been like a nice tool to have for that. Um, I say there's another one that is the Fab Filter Q3 EQ, which
Mm-hmm.
it's a dynamic EQ, but that thing is a Swiss Army knife.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like
I've,
that
I've,
thing.
I've touched that. Yeah, I've worked with the Fab
I think
Filter.
normally they sell it for like somewhere between like 140 and 180 bucks.
Hmm.
It's worth every penny
Oh yeah,
because
definitely.
like it doesn't take up a lot of CPU. It does a lot of really cool things. It's endlessly useful. It's like I probably use it on everything. This is not. I wish it was like one of those things where like they were paying me to say that, but they're not.
Yeah, yeah. Hey,
Like
you,
Fab Filter, if you're listening to this, I could use some of those advertising dollars,
there
or
you go.
if you wanna like help help fund the studio, reach out to me.
Definitely. How you feel about Waves plugin? You use any of those?
The waves,
Yeah.
there's a couple that I use all the time. They have a delay. It's the H delay,
Mm.
which if you're familiar with that, is like that thing's super cool. It's like I love using that thing, especially it's got like a tap tempo thing.
Mm.
So like if you're trying to find like like, especially like when it comes to like dub delays and stuff, is like if you're trying to find something that's like not quite to the BPM of the song, but like something that's kind of in between. It's like you can sit there and like you can tap it and like it'll get you that, that tempo. Um, it's like they also have like that H compressor is also like a really good one. It's like that's really good for like drums and stuff. Like if you want to like try and punch something up a little bit
Mm-hmm.
or try to tame it down a little bit. Trying to think what else they have that I use all the time. It's one of those things where it's kind of like in the moment I'm thinking about it and I know like I can grab vitamin. They have a harmonic
I know.
distortion.
Mm,
As like I use it all the time. It's like a 6 band EQ, but instead of using like actual EQ,
mm,
it's basically like adding harmonic information, and you've
mm.
got you've got like like five, I think it's 5 bands to choose from. Um, and like sometimes it's kind of crazy thinking about distortion as being something that could make something sound more clear, or make something sound like more present or like more upfront. It's kind of weird, but that
Hey,
that be what it do.
yes, and well, not speaking on that specific plugin, but I actually use distortion in my mixes now for my vocals.
Yeah,
Not, of course, not like an excessive amount, but I use, well, recently I found that distortion play a vital role in my sound. I don't know
yeah,
about other engineers and if they use it on other people vocal they work with, but for me, I've recently fell in love with it.
yeah.
It brings
So
a beautiful feel to it.
there's a interesting thing is like when it comes to like old school like recording consoles and stuff. A
Mm,
lot of people talk about like quote unquote analog sound, and some people look to like tape or tape emulators. And from what I know about the recording industry is like when things went digital, like
mm,
a lot of engineers were like, "Oh, thank God," because anytime you recorded something, you bounced a tape, or you had to like cut something, you had to like cut the tape. It took forever. You'd have to have like another person get involved. It was hard to keep track of like where the actual content was because it's on tape. It's like you don't have like where you can pull it up on a computer. You didn't have any of that stuff. And on top of that, there was this annoying like on everything.
but
So people
but that is like I crave that. I'll be wanting that sound.
not over everything. I mean, we're talking about like to the point to where you would be competing with that sound over like the actual audio. Like
Mm,
like it would be like
okay,
so
I get
loud
what you're
that like
saying.
yeah. And how they were able to like get through it and get around that stuff, like especially on the professional sounding recordings of like the 70s and the 80s, and you know
Hmm.
the fact that they were able to make it sound as clear as they did seems like magic to me,
Mm,
because tape was just a horrible medium, just period. So like the fact that like people are like nowadays they're like, yeah man, it's like we want that hiss. It's like, why?
yeah, cause
Like
that's what I just said. Like I be wanting to hear that. Like I be wanting that hiss. Like even when I create my beats and everything, like I I I got a whole kit or whatnot of like hisses and vinyl sounds. Like I put that in every beat I make.
yeah,
On
it's
it
like
bring more grit to it. It make you feel a certain type of way for some reason. Well, at
yeah
least for
it's
me.
yeah it's kind of it's nostalgic because it was such a big part of recording back in the day. It's like like you're talking about, like it's if you pull up like an old beat from like the 70s, and like you like that drum beat and you want to like sample it, well, that hiss is going to be in
Right, right.
there. Just because it's like it's either coming from like the record and the record player, or it was there in the studio when they recorded it, and it's just baked into the sound now. you know
Definitely.
and then like digital came along, and it actually got rid of a lot of that. But when it comes to like analog gear, it's like because of like the different transistors and the different components, is like sometimes those things would actually distort the incoming signal, like coming from the microphone sometimes. And sometimes is like that distortion actually kind of helped it to kind of change the dynamics of it, to where like maybe something like wasn't quite as dynamic. as it would be like with like the whole digital thing. And when it comes to like digital, it's like if you record something, I think it's like 96K, it's like it actually it increases the dynamics so much that you almost can't distort it, which is
Mm,
crazy.
mm. Interesting. Interesting. All right, so how do you approach mixing and mastering to ensure the best possible sound quality?
By the seat of my pants. Yeah. No, it's like it's kind of weird. It's like those are two completely different jobs.
Yeah, I
Like it's like if I could like realistically, if like money were no object and I could hire another person to do the mastering, it's like I would hire another person to do it. Just
oh, so let's give us a second. Which one is well? Obviously, it's probably mastering, but I'll just still ask, which one is like more difficult, or for
I'd
you
probably
at
say
least?
I say mixing is probably more difficult. Mastering is not supposed to be that difficult,
Right.
but basically it's like
Totally touch ups.
the main thing is like when the recording engineer and the mixing engineer is also the mastering engineer,
Mm.
you know, like you're hearing the same thing over and over and over and over again, you know, so like you start losing your perspective, you know. So a
Mm.
lot of times, like if I become the mastering engineer for a project, I'll tell people it's like, look, you know, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm gonna have to take a couple weeks off from listening to this thing
Mm.
so that I can kind of cleanse my palate and get a fresh perspective.
Mm.
Because like if I hand in this music immediately, like if I'm if we're at the point it's like, okay, I'm done mixing, now we're gonna master it. If I
Mm.
hand this over to a person who's never heard it before, they've already got that fresh perspective. Like
Right.
they've never heard it before. You know, they don't have to worry about like the song being stuck in their head on loop, you know, and then like
Yeah.
having to work with that, you know, they
Yeah.
don't have to worry about any of those things, you know. So like having that fresh perspective is a huge, huge thing. And like when you've been like recording and mixing something, you know, like the mixing part tends to be the hardest part, especially when you're working with something that was recorded in a hurry and you're
Mm.
trying to make it sound good, you know, because if you if you spend a lot of time or like if you spend a sufficient amount of time getting the sounds that you want and the things that you want to sound a particular way, it's like if you focus on that, then it makes the mixing job a lot easier, you know. And if the mixing job is easier, then like the mastering job is easier.
Mm.
But if you're in a hurry and like time is not on your side, then you can't make those choices. And then like when you get to the mixing phase, you have to use all these different tools and things to try to kind of massage stuff to not necessarily get it the way that you want it to be, but to get it to the way to where like it sounds the best. You know, the way that where like it's still kind of conveying that feeling or that intent.
Huh. What role does collaboration play in audio engineering? As you just said, having the different perspectives, like
Yeah.
of mixing engineer, then taking it, giving it to a mastering engineer. Just elaborate on that a little bit more.
It's like it doesn't really play a huge role in like what I do from the day to day, but like every once in a while, it's like I'll get somebody who comes in and like all they need me to do is just to record it and then send it to another studio for them to mix and worry about, which is great because that's one less thing for me to do.
Right, right.
You know, it's like when you're the kitchen, the chef, and the waitress. You know, things get a little complicated and like it kind of slows things down. It really speeds up the process when you're not the only person doing everything, you know.
Mm.
But when it comes to collaboration, it's like there have been a few things that I've like quote unquote collaborated on, but you know, I always feel like if I've got an artist who is, especially people who can play more than one instrument,
Mm-hmm.
it's like usually like when I'm working with them, it's like usually they kind of look to me as like as far as like being like a band member sometimes,
Mm.
so where I'm like giving them suggestions or ideas as far as like, you know, well, we could go in this direction to kind of highlight this thing, or we could go in this direction to kind of make this more prominent or whatever. And the cool thing is like I'm just here to kind of give ideas, but it's not my song, so my feelings aren't hurt. You know,
Right,
it's just it's kind of a creative outlet. I could be like, here's a fancy cool thing, and then people either like it or they don't like it. You know, but at the end of the day, it's like if they don't like it, it's not really that big of a deal because it's their art.
right,
You know, but every once in a while, it's like I'll get somebody who's like open to suggestions, and I get to kind of put my stamp on it, so to speak. So like
mm,
there's a few records out there that may have me playing drums or playing guitars or doing backing vocals that I purposefully told them like, please don't tell people that I did that. Like the last thing I need is to be like the recording engineer, the session musicians, the mixing engineer, and the mastering engineer. It's just like, you know, I mean,
yeah.
I can do those things, but I'd prefer not to. That's a lot of work.
All
And
right,
then like on top of that, it's like I don't get the royalties. It's like,
yeah.
like I need some retirement, money. It's like I need these royalties.
Yeah, and another since you did pick up on that just then, I don't think what we all know this, but like those who do the work on the back end don't get enough credit at all. Like engineers, mixing and mastering engineers and
Yeah, they
producers and those who behind the scene, like, and I feel like those be the most important ones because if you look at more so the artist aspect, well, they have it pros and cons, but the artists, of course, they the visionary and everything too, but the engineers and those behind the scene are all of that in one. They are everything. They're like gumbo,
yeah.
literally. They designing everything. They coming up with concepts. Also, they doing everything on the back end that they don't get enough credit for. So I
I feel like
definitely
that's just kind of like the normal thing. It's like people who work the hardest usually get the least, recognition and like usually the least pay.
yeah, because even with me as an artist, like man, artistry, writing music, what I do, well, of course, I do everything myself now, but when it on more so on the artist aspect, writing music is easy now for me. Like what I got to do, write music, pull from my imagination. That's it
Yeah.
for
And
artists. That's
yeah.
literally it.
Yeah, so I
And
mean that's a great thing too. Is like I'm not like a big fan of like the whole idea that people have to like push content out like all the time now. It seems ridiculous to me because like it's not really there for people. It's there for these algorithms. It's like
right.
some of I was talking to somebody else the other day, and it's like some of my favorite bands release an album like maybe once every 3 years, maybe once every 5 years.
Mhm.
you know and the fact that they're not releasing something like every other month is actually kind of a blessing because then I get to kind of check out like other artists or like other bands or things. It's
Mm,
like there's you know like before the whole streaming thing took off, it's like there was enough music out there already that kept me happy and kept me content. And
mm.
now it's like there's so much
Overload.
of it. But like people trying to get noticed or trying to get out there, it's like they've got this like insurmountable hill to climb now because you don't have like radio stations to worry about anymore. Now
Right.
you've got the TikTok algorithm and like the
Oh yeah,
YouTube
definitely.
algorithm and like all that stuff. And that I'm glad that I'm not out like trying to be a big artist right now,
Mm.
because I I would not survive.
It's a little bit more difficult, but
Yep.
it's like a blessing in disguise, so to say, because it's beautiful. Got the art algorithm set up and everything. They're just more so from me, in the artist aspect. But we have the algorithm set up and everything like that. But at the same time, it's like, do we really need all of this?
Yeah.
Because you just said like back then, it ain't too much that artists had to do to become who they are or put out
Yeah.
a project and everything for to get noticed and everything. But now, man, and then today, all the everybody want attention,
Hmm.
but everybody attention span is not. It's very short, so it's like
It's one of those things where
it's weird.
I really wish that like instead of like the algorithm being like a continental or like a country thing or even like a worldwide thing,
Mm,
being like a local thing, like from like
mm,
starting at like the local city and then like expanding out to like the state or like the
right.
area code or like whatever, because I feel like a lot of people are they're competing in this big open world market, but if
Mm,
they're only competing on like
they
say
local areas.
like the Greenville, Charlotte, Atlanta
Mm,
area, if like they're only competing there, is like they'd probably end up doing a lot better because that's where they're gonna like drive and play shows, and that's the people they're
right.
gonna interact with, and those are the people that they're gonna sell music to.
Oh
You know,
man, you so right about that. And fun fact, like me, I check. I'm big on SEOs and analytics and things like that. But when I check my analytics, I have most of my people that pretty much listen to me or anything, it's outside of the states, outside of the US. That's where most of my audience is. It's
yeah,
like
which is weird, but the cool thing about
right.
those analytics is like if you go on tour, you can just go to the places where
That's
people are
most viewed. Yeah,
gonna
listening to
show
you.
up,
Yeah, that's
and
the beauty of
that's kind of cool, but that also kind of like makes things kind of weird, like when you go on tour and like you never go to these other places.
it. Right.
It's like, man, when you come into Ohio, it's like, never.
Right. How do you select frequencies and tones to evoke specific emotions or state of mind in your audio or your engineering process? Do you, like, say for instance, automation to tweak certain parts to increase the volume or things like that?
Usually, it's more of like, uh, it's usually more of a means to an end. Like
Mm,
I usually never have to like go through and like automate frequencies, but usually if I do, it's because I'm using the EQ as like a filter, because EQ, it can do a lot of things, um, but like one of the cool things, um, especially when it comes to like rap music and EDM and
mm,
sometimes pop music, is like the old school like telephone effect. It's
mm,
like you can find
very popular.
really just like any old EQ will do the job, and because all you're doing is you're taking out everything up to about 400 hertz, and then like everything above, I think it's I think it's 7,000 hertz. So like you basically you're left with like that in between, and then you can actually use automation to kind of scale those out, and
Mm,
it's like one of those weird things where like you're taking basically like the telephone effect and like you're kind of zooming out in a way, so like where it's like suddenly now it's like in full color. It's like we're not actually seeing those things, but for whatever reason it was like our ears is like as we're like listening to it, it's like it just kind of paints that picture for us.
right.
you know it's like music, even though it's you hear it and you don't see it, it's like it can still paint a picture, and it's kind of cool. um but it's like I don't really dive into like what's a good frequency and what's not a good frequency, like
Mm,
just blindly. It's like it always serves a purpose, or it always serves a need to the mix. Like sometimes people have really big boomy voices,
mm,
and then we've got a song that's got a lot of bass, you know, and the
yeah.
two things can't really
Can't.
coexist.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
you can't have like a big boomy voice and have a lot of bass,
Right.
because like they're gonna kind of conflict with each other, especially when you start trying to make it loud enough to be a commercial release, you
Mm,
know, because like as you start to squash things, is like they get compressed and they interact with each other, and like they almost kind of it's almost kind of like trying to squeeze uh, like too much stuff into a container. It's like stuff's gonna spill out of the sides because there's no
right.
room for it to go. So, like sometimes that actually happens with audio, because audio is a physical thing. People talk about mud, for example, and it's been like
Mm,
one of the coolest examples I've come up with is like people talk about like what is audio, quote unquote, mud,
mm,
and basically it's like as sound waves travel is like,
mm,
and typically outside of the computer, it's like when audio exists. It actually moves from one place to another, and it moves almost in the same way that water moves, or like light or any of that stuff. So the slower frequencies take longer to move, and because they take longer to move, they're slower. More frequencies can actually interact with them.
Mm,
So like they can almost kind of catch, they can almost kind of act as like a net, or kind of like sludge, or
mm,
so like if you think of it that way, it's kind of crazy, but sometimes it's like the thing you need is you know less mud, and then sometimes what you need is like the opposite of that. um
right.
I forgot what the question was.
Oh nah, you could have just kept ranting because
Yeah.
you was going into a great direction.
Yeah, but like sometimes you have the exact opposite problem where you've got something that sounds anemic. You got something that sounds like it's got no bass whatsoever, and you
Mhm,
might be able to use an EQ and actually like kind of bring some of that into the mix. And then sometimes it's just not there in the raw recorded audio, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you have to come up with some other solution. And sometimes that solution is like maybe we add an instrument to kind of fill in that space,
mm,
or maybe we add a harmony to it artificially that's a little bit lower, and then like that does the job, you know. So y- you know if music was like a four-course meal, it's like you want to have the appetizer and the dessert and like all
right.
those things. Like you want to make sure that you've got stuff that's pleasing to the eyes and stuff that's also pleasing to the belly. So like you've got to have like just enough, you know, to be effective, but not so much that it gets distracting,
Mm.
or steals the spotlight.
How can audio engineering contribute to the emerging field of sound therapy and its application in holistic health practices? If you
That is a good
can.
question. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So, as like I'm sure there's probably like people that are out there that like want to record, like say either like meditative music or binaural beats or
Mhm.
things like that. There are some people who specialize in that sort of stuff. Um,
Definitely.
but
Hopefully, I'll be able to reach out to somebody that
yeah,
do, so they can elaborate more.
yeah, but like a lot of the stuff that's out there is like it's like in the same way that people write beats. It's like
Hmm.
you can look it up on YouTube and just like buy it and then like put like your vocals over top of it. It's like there's actually a lot of places out there now that just sell like meditative like background music. You know,
Mm.
I mean they used to sell that stuff all the time over at Bed Bath and Beyond. There's like a whole section dedicated to it. You could pick up some headphones and like listen to it. There's all
Hmm.
like stuff you listen to like like they kept it like in the bathroom section because apparently that's what ladies do when they're in the bathroom is they listen to meditative music.
Wow.
I guess I don't know, but that's where they kept it for some reason. It was I was always kind of fascinated by that. But nah, it's like as far as like getting into that is like I would say is like if you're wanting to get into the therapy side of that, um, there are schools that use that as part of a part of like a therapeutic courses. I don't know of any colleges right off the top of my head that do that. I know they exist because there are people that are getting employed by hospitals to do that very thing.
Mm.
So, but they're not technically audio engineers. It's like they they may act more kind of like not so much like a therapist, but like more kind of like a chiropractor. It's like you go to a chiropractor like when your back is all messed up, and like they'll make pops and adjustments.
Right.
Whether or not that actually does anything to your spinal health or whatnot is like in that moment, it's like you feel better and you might not have as much pain. You know, I feel like the audio field, at least when it comes to like therapeutics, is like I feel like it's kind of going in that direction to where like it does have real world implications, especially when it comes to like surgical procedures and
Definitely.
when it comes to like people who are healing and they're doing like chemotherapy or something.
Right.
It's like these sorts of things actually help uh, the body to kind of heal itself. I don't want to say like a placebo effect, but the placebo effect is a real thing. It's like I
Definitely.
because like if a person believes that something they're taking is healing them, you
It's
know even if it's
tripping.
just like a sugar pill or like a water pill or whatever, it's like
Right.
that belief actually does the job. It's like
Right.
their body responds to that. So like when it comes to like therapeutics in that frame, because we know a lot more about like how audio interacts with a person's brain and how that facilitates well-being and motivation or good health is like that's a big open field. So I would say
Oh yeah.
anybody interested in that specifically is like if you're wanting to get a job in it is like definitely look into like any kind of college courses or things like nearby, because
Yeah. And it's definitely been data backed by those practices that prove that, these things actually work. Like sound heals. I mean, because if you think about it, we surrounded by nothing but sound. And like I said previously, sound is numbers. You can't live your life without numbers, and sound is the same way. When you will wake up, you wake up to sound unknowingly, even not only in your environment or around your house, but just waking up. Like this non-existent thing right here that we living in is nothing but sound. It
yeah,
just tuned at a lower frequency. So sound heals and sound is alive all around us. So yeah, it's definitely important and key. But I think I don't got no more questions for you. So
yeah.
I
I would
guess.
say like aside from all that is like one of the things I do for me personally is like when it comes to
Mhm,
like sound therapy,
mhm.
it's like I go out to the woods where there's like almost no sound.
Oh man, I don't blame you. I'm the same exact way. Like
Yeah,
I became sensitive to sounds.
yeah.
Like
There's just something like extremely therapeutic just about just the sound of like the trees and
right,
like maybe like a few birds or like there's just something about that particular sound that just like gives you like a good reset or like a good escape,
right, or
especially if like you
maybe.
live in a city like Greenville.
Oh man, wow! I live right here close by the downtown area, so you can only imagine.
Yeah,
But
all that noise, all that it's basically it's noise pollution is what it is.
well, maybe those environments be like a reset because it's more closely related to like nature,
Yeah,
like things that are natural that
yeah, hundred
came
percent.
from the essence of God, the source of the universe.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure, hey, she knew what she was doing when everything was created. So
Mhm.
yeah, I guess that's gonna wrap up this episode. Daniel, wish I had your face in here, but
Well,
hey,
we're recording studio is kind of oh, what's the word, is it ironic? Yeah,
mm,
it's like no video cameras on the no video cameras on the recording console. You know,
okay, oh yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah, for
maybe
sure.
maybe one day it's like I'll actually get one so I can like live stream some of the stuff that we do.
Definitely. But nah, I definitely enjoyed this episode. I really was going for like 30, 40 minutes. But when it
Ye-
comes to sound frequency and vibration, it's such
yeah,
a vast topic that can go on for like centuries if you want to. So,
yeah. So I'll leave you with this thought, and
mhm,
it's something that's like I've kind of come to consider. It's like really cool. It's like the basic difference between sound and light is frequency. Is like
mhm,
it's all part of the electromagnetic spectrum. But then two, sound does not exist without time,
mm,
and like a note is not a thing until like it happens over time. Like
mm,
like the way that we judge frequencies is in
mhm,
hertz, and hertz is actually a measure of frequency over time.
mm.
So that's something else to ponder and sit there and think about.
Definitely. I love that. Hey, I might put that in the quote.
Yeah.
Frame it. I'm gonna quote you on that one for sure, Daniel.
Yeah.
But I guess, hey, hopefully y'all enjoyed this video, this episode. Um, hey, with that being said, Daniel, can you leave any information of where people can reach you at, where you're located, and
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like
It's well, it's Sit and Spin Recording Studios. So if you want to reach us, check us out. It's like we're at Sit the letter N spinstudios.com. We are located in Greenville, South Carolina at 10 Michael Drive. And if you need to reach out to me, cell phones 864-586-0557. And, you know, give us a call, send us an email, check us out. You know, if you just like want to come in and like take a tour of the place, you know, reach out, let me know. Like, we'll be more than happy to meet you and, you know, let you see and see if we can help you to, you know, get your ideas into reality.
that. Definitely. And hey, from my personal experience, they do a great job. So hey, I highly recommend. But all right, Daniel, I
Yeah, man.
guess I'll see you soon.
All right, man.
And
I'll see you in
thank you
the.
for coming on.
Yeah, man. All right. Later.